We're holding in Siman Peites, Sif Dalet. The Shulchan Aruch says the following halacha. Mi sha'ochal gevina, person eats cheese. V'roitza lecho basar, and you want to go and eat meat. Tzorech levayer me'al hashulchan, one must remove from on the table sheyoyre pas, the leftover bread sha'ochal gevina that he ate with the cheese. And the reason is obvious, because we don't want him to be eating that bread with the meat that he's about to eat. If it had with it cheese on it or whatever it is. You cannot eat cheese on a mat that you ate meat. And the same thing, the opposite. The reason is obvious, because there's probably leftover residue of one of the minim, and you're going to come to be eating it with the opposite min. It's going to come mix around with what you're eating. So that's a problem. Then says the Shulchan Aruch the following halacha: the kol shekin, and it is for sure the case, she'asr lachtich gevina, one cannot cut cheese, afilu tzainenes, even if the cheese is cold, Bisakin shirigilin lachtich basar, with a knife that you usually cut meat. Cannot cut cheese with a meat knife, even if it's cold. Even the bread that you ate with the cheese, you cannot cut the bread. You cannot cut bread to then go eat it with cheese with a meat knife. Cannot do that. The both ways is a problem. So the Shulchan Aruch is writing the following halacha. First of all, you cannot take a knife that is fleshig and use it to cut cheese, cold, even cold. And you can't use it to cut the bread that you're going to eat with the cheese. It's also a problem. So what is the pshat in this halacha? The Rishonim explain the following yesod. So this is from the Ramban. Okay, and we're going to see it's also the Chuvas HaRashba. The Lashon is like this: Mifnei Shelapa'amin, because sometimes Hasakinim, the knives, Shoymnoi Shel Basar Karush Al Panim, there's a little bit of residue of meat. You have a fleshing knife, there's still residue of the fat of the meat that is still on that knife. If you cut cheese, oy hapas, or bread, nidbak me oysa shamnunas alem, this little residue will go onto the cheese. This residue of meat will go onto the cheese. V'nimtza oichel basar b'chol. You will come to eat meat and milk. Okay, now, just a little bit of the little difference in the language in the Chuvas HaRashba that the Bari Shulchan brings down. In Siman involved, the Rashba says, Sheroiv hasakinim, most knives, shuman shel basar karush aleim. The shuman, this some of this fat of meat resides still on the knife. That's the language of the Rashba. Okay, so that's the chayra, the pshat over here. Now, why does just to be masber, the Bari Shulchan is masber, one little point here which is important. Why does the Shulchan Aruch say, right, the first part of the Shulchan Aruch, the dinim were that there was residue still of cheese, right? Can't have the leftover bread, can't eat on the same tablecloth because there's leftovers. So what's the kol shkein that the Shulchan Aruch is saying? And kol shkein you can't cut with a knife because there's also going to be residue. So says the Bari Shulchan, Lashon Kolshkein did not get a Mechaber, and the Mechaber is Lashon of Kolshkein. Nira minu mishum b'shal yidei adoichech shel lechitzas hasakin yesh lochus yosher sheniskaneach me'abotzer al avina v'apas mimash yesh lochus b'nekia b'alma b'loy doichech hasakin. So basically, the Bari just explains that the Mechaber is explaining, because here you not only have the shuman, this little bit of fat that resides on the knife, but since you also have the pressure of the knife, so for even there's more of a reason to assume that that residue will go onto the opposite min and will create basar v'chal. Okay, so that's l'chayra the halach over here in the Shulchan Aruch. Cannot cut cheese with even cold with a milk fleishig knife, and you can't even cut the bread that you're going to eat with the cheese with a fleishig knife. However, Zoktim Ramah Miu Al Yedei Ni'itza Bekarka. But if you take the knife and you stick it into the ground, Ni'itza Bekarka Kasha Shari, then it will be permissible. So if you take the knife and you stick it into the ground, it will be kosher. Now, what is the process of Ni'itza L'chayra doing? L'chayra, it is basically koshering that you get rid of that residue. That's l'chayra what it's doing. So now, what's interesting here is there's a little bit of this, right? It gets rid of the residue. You stick it into the ground 10 times, it gets rid of the residue. Now, there is a little bit of a machlokes here. It's an important machlokes. Take a look at the Taz, Sifkot involved. The Taz says like following: Miu al yedei ni'itza. Ze koi amasha kosav sheroitza lachdoich gevino besakin shabasar. This Ramah is talking about you want to cut cheese with the fleishig knife. Aval b'masha kosav she'osar lachdoich lechem loy tzorich rak kinuach hasakin k'damashim b'yisaysev b'masha kosav b'shem Orchos Chaim b'shem Rabbeinu Shimshon. So just to explain, he says that what the Ramah is saying, that you actually need to stick it into the ground 10 times, that's only if you want to cut actual cheese. But if you want to cut the bread to use the cheese, says the Taz, you only need to just clean the knife. You don't need to stick it into the ground 10 times to do that whole, sort of like a koshering experience. So you only need to do that for the cheese. And he says, but for the bread, there's a different part. The Sham Kazav Atam, the Rabbeinu Shimshon says, to have a nice and tam or nice and tam, because when you cut the bread, it's not barnat. Now, why is it not barnat? It's not barnat because the bread, remember, you're sticking it into the bread, okay, and it goes from it doesn't directly go it's not going directly into the cheese. It's first it went into the knife. Then from the knife it's going to the bread. And from the bread it will then go afterwards with cheese. So it's already 2 stages before it got to the cheese. That is what the Rabbeinu Shimshon wants to say. And therefore, he says you don't need to do a graisa koshering because it's anyways not barnat. Says according to us, we don't need this. Only by a davar charif is it a problem of being absorbing of the pressure of the knife. So, what exactly does this Taz mean? So let's take a look at the Bani. He explains this very geshmak. He says like this. He says, really, you need ni'itza, right? Really, you would need ni'itza. And it's not good enough to just clean it off. Because what happens when you use the pressure of a knife, it gets out some of the stuff that's on the knife. Right? It gets out some of the stuff that's in the knife, even with cold. Okay? So, therefore, Okay. So now he says like this, and okay, yeah, fine, but really, so that is for the stuff that's inside the knife. There's two, in other words, basically there's two yesodis. There's stuff that's still in the knife, and that could come out through the pressure of the knife, and then there's going to be the shuman, the residue that's still on the outside of the knife. So he says like this. For the residue that's on the outside of the knife, that all you need to do is clean it. Okay. Now, it says, therefore, by bread, it's enough by bread, meaning saying like this. Really, there's two yesodis. There's two issues in this halacha. With knives, you have two problems. There's the inside of the knife that can come out when you use pressure, and then there's the stuff that's on the outside, the shuman hakarash al pneim. The shuman that's karash al pneim. Everybody agrees that for that issue, what do you have to do? All you got to do is clean the knife. However, for the stuff that's on the inside of the knife that comes out through the pressure, that is a problem. That's a problem. That requires a kashering. That requires a full kasher. So he says like this. By regular cheese, it would be a problem. By regular cheese, it's a problem. Because you can't say not or not. It goes, the pressure brings out the stuff that's on the inside of the knife. It goes directly into the cheese. However, by chatichas hapas, all you need is kinuach, because whatever the stuff that's absorbed is only nice and tam or nice and tam. It's only not or not before it gets to the cheese. And so therefore, all you need is, you do not need, says the Taz, therefore by the bread, you do not need ni'itzo. Therefore, you do not need ni'itzo. Okay. Now, stop what the Taz is saying over here by the end. The Taz is saying like this. The Taz is saying, well, Lamaisa, even though we're now saying that the henter is because of it's not by bread. It's too far removed. However, we don't even need to come out to this, because according to what we hold in Siman Tzadivov, that we don't hold that duchke de sakina is enough. The pressure of a knife is enough to remove what's absorbed inside of a knife. Only if it's a spicy item will that combine with the pressure of the knife to remove what's inside of the knife. So really, Batson, we don't even need to come out to the heter of nap or not. The bottom line is it won't come out. What's absorbed will not come out, and therefore says the Taz that really be'etzem we do not need. You do not need be'etzem by bread. It's not going to be a problem, and all you need for bread is to clean it off. Now I just have a kasha here. I see the Yad Yehuda, the body asks my kasha. The body asks, okay, then l'chayra, if it's true that really that the pressure of the knife doesn't do anything by itself, if the pressure of the knife doesn't do anything by itself, then why is it that to cut cheese is a problem? All you got to do is kinuach. All you got to do is rinse off the knife. L'chayra, you should just be able to rinse off the knife. And you can do it because you got to get rid of the stuff that's on the outside, the residue on the outside. Kinuach helps to get rid of the residue on the outside. The stuff that's inside doesn't come out. So it's l'chayra, it's a problem. And I see that the body asks this kasha, l'chayra kasha, dimkein af lachtech gevina nami lisagi bekinuach hasakin. Says l'chayra, to cut cheese should also only require kinuach. He brings down that l'chayra, there's other ways to learn this Taz. That the Sefer Yad Yehuda says that really that's not the right pshat in the Taz. Really, the pshat in the Taz is that why do you need to eat? So why do you need to stick it into the ground 10 times? not because of what's absorbed in the knife, rather because you need to get rid of what's on the outside. In other words, you need neitza for the outside stuff. Okay. Now, why are we more makel by bread? It says we're makel there. That by bread we were makel. Why by bread we're more makel? But at any rate, that is the chayra, the pshat over here. That's the chayra, what's going on. So it's a chayra, an interesting shita sataz. Okay, now the question is, and just tamazai, just to point out that we're going to see that the shach learns. We're going to see like this. The shach argues on this taz, and the shach says that even for bread you need neitza. Even for bread you need neitza. Okay. Okay, let's go right. Says the shach, miu you didn't neitza b'karka kosher shari mashma. Dim not so b'karka, if you did stick it into the ground. Kasha, mutter lechatchila lachtek by pas lechol im gvina. You could lechatchila go cut bread to go eat it with cheese. Now the shach says you could cut bread if you do neitza, but he doesn't say you can cut cheese, and that is what the Pri Megadim points out here, that the shach is only permitting to cut bread if you do neitza. He does not allow you to cut cheese. Okay. Geen maas met de weer geschaaien. Ja, kolboy sham geen kasse met er schatus. Sham den zijn hadje. Marshal per kolbos Siman ches oyster lachtig by pas lechel but in kvina. He says you're not allowed to cut bread to eat it with cheese, even if you did af im natu, even if you didn't eat some. De lo yetiru neitza elam eira b'mikra shechat b'sakin shechol of basar oy ibcha. We only permitted neitza in a case where you cut with a socket, a milk knife, meat, or the opposite. That you need neitza to be machshir the knife from isser. So the Marshal says you cannot use neitza as a way that you can then go, you can just stick the thing in that and then use it for the opposite min. You cannot do that. It's only to kasher a knife when you messed up already. That's the Marshal's opinion. Shach sounds like no, you could stick the knife in the ground and then that's fleshing a knife and then go cut bread for cheese, not cheese itself, but bread. The kasha frek the shach. If you cut a turnip with a meat knife, that the taste of the meat got knocked away with this turnip. Right, as a turnip has the kayak to get rid of all the taste of the meat knife. You could take that knife and go cut a radish to eat it with kutach. So you see clear. You can you cut a thing, you kasher the knife with cutting this lefes, right? It's in a way to kasher the knife, and now you can use it for the opposite min. The kolskin shard var b'shein charifim. Sure, you could use it for things that are not charif. The Shulchan Aruch says over there you could use it for things that are spicy. So for sure, for things that are not spicy, neitza is even more of an act of kashering than cutting this turnip. And yet, still, since the turnip has the ability to kasher it, it's this. We allow it. So you see clearly not like these marshal. Boy, kasher Rabbi Seif v'Zara b'chol pasuk misa lehed afilu v'sagin shel ovikacham motor lechol tznoin lechatchila neitza. You go eat. You could cut something and then go eat it through neitza, through using kashering it. Even to go to use it for a spicy item, it's permissible. Says, however, when it's a gallish knife, so then when you do when you do this ni'itza, then that's mamish an act of koshering it. But meaning it's different there than what we're talking about, where you're going from meat to milk and back. There's a problem to go from milk and from one to the other. Well, if you're taking it, it's mamish treif, so then you're mamish koshering it. It was totally gone. You're koshering it. Now you can use it for whatever you want. But there is a problem of going from one to the other, and the reason is because we're going to see that you're going to come to what's going to happen is that you might, if you might forget to if you keep going from one to the other, you might end up the way he says it here. You'll end up forgetting to do Hagol, because if you keep going back and forth, you'll forget one time to do Hagol, and it will come to be a problem. So, I mean, not Hagol, but Ne'itza. The point is that, so the Shach disagrees with the Marshal, but he answers up one kasha that he has on the Marshal. And he says, V'chol zeh midina, the zol midin. Avol kvar nogu kol Yisrael liyos lehem shnei sakinim. Klal Yisrael has a minute to have two knives. If it's a pressing situation, okay, we'll go with the din that you could do the ne'itza. So the Shach is saying, we have a minute to have two knives. But if one did ne'itza, you could go use it for the opposite thing. Now, he does not say you could take a fleshing knife, do ne'itza, then use it for cheese. He says you can take a fleshing knife, do ne'itza, and use it for the bread that you want to use for cheese. Now, what's the pshat in that? Pri Meganim Chav Beis, the Seif Sidah says, "Mash malachtich gevina, afal yedei ne'itza, aser." He says that is aser. Midaloi kosav rabusa v'chein mash maloshin ramah. Right, and the reason for that is because the Shach is saying that one step removed, we were not concerned you might come to forget. But to eat it from meat to cheese, I mean, to take a fleshig knife, do ne'itza and use it for cheese, that we are talking a word, shema yishkach, you might forget. That we are talking a word, you might forget to do it, and it will come to be, you'll forget to do the ne'itza, and it will come to be a problem. So, and the Taz l'chayra holds, well, we'll see. The Taz does not seem to hold that way. The Taz says, according to the minhag, it's a problem. We're going to see that the Ramah says, "Avol kfar nogu kol Yisrael liyos lehem shnei sakinim." Klal Yisrael has two different knives. Lirsham echad mehem sheyehei lo heker, and they mark one of them so that it should be a heker. V'nir v'nogu lirsham shacholov. They mark the milk one. Ve'in l'shanas minig shel Yisrael. So the Taz, if you're medayik good in the Taz holds that this really maker adin ne'itza would help to take a fleshig knife and then go cut cheese. Maker and then you can go cut cheese. We have a minhag not to. And by the way, take a look at the Taz. The Taz says on the minhag, near kavanah say the lafia minhag also lachtach kavina b'sakin of basar. According to the minhag, you can't cut cheese with a sakin of basar. I feel like they eat a even through sticking it to the ground. Kachach miro latzma likach legvina sakin acher to get a separate knife. Dafka. Aval mingamam lachta lechem lecho gvina. The Shach says that if you clean a knife, you could totally cut bread, no problem. I mean, the Taz says you can totally cut bread. You can totally cut bread. That's not a problem. So let's get clear. Let's get very clear. According to the Shulchan Aruch, there's a halacha here that you're not allowed to take a fleshing knife or a milking knife, cut the opposite. Can't do that. And you can't even cut the bread. However, through ne'itza, it's permissible. Okay? Through ne'itza, if you do stick the knife into the ground 10 times, it's permissible. So, on this, let's go slow. On this, let's go slow. There's a couple arguments over here. according to the Taz, you don't really even need the Itza. Just let's talk about on a kashrus level. Now we're not talking about minhagos. On a kashrus level, you do not need the Itza to effectuate, to allow you to use a fleshig knife to cut bread for cheese. You don't even need that. All you need to do is clean off the knife. Clean off the knife well, that's fine. And the reason is because you got it, because seems to be the reason is because we, really, when you need ni'itza for basically the way the Taz understands, according to the Adi Yehuda, you need ni'itza for to get rid of the residue that's still on the surface of the knife. You need ni'itza for that. But by bread, we were more makel. So you doing the itza will get rid of it. We'll get rid of that residue. And by bread, we were more makel that you don't need to. All you got to do is clean it. Okay. Because you can mix in nap or not, maybe fine. The shach holds no. The shach holds you need the itza even to use it for the bread for cheese. You need the itza for regular cheese. You need the itza. Okay, that's 100% the case. Now. That's so argument number one is what do you need ni'itza actually for? According to the Taz, you only need ni'itza to cut actual cheese. According to Shach, you need ni'itza for both bread and you need it for both the cheese. Now, what about if you did ni'itza? What does that allow you to do? If you took a fleshing knife and you did ni'itza, can you now go and use that knife to cut cheese and bread of cheese that you're going to use with cheese? So the Shach is very clear that once you do ni'itza, you can only use it for the bread, because we are concerned if we allow you to do ni'itza to go use it with cheese, we are worried you might forget. But bread, we weren't as worried. Marshal holds you are not allowed to take a knife and do ni'itza with it in order a fleshing knife to then go use it with the opposite min. You cannot do it. Not allowed to do it. That's the Marshal. The Taz says, no, you can do it, and you can do it completely. You could use it for cheese. You could use it for bread that you're going to eat with cheese. You can totally stick the knife into the ground, the fleshing knife, 10 times, no problem. And everybody agrees that l'chayr there's a minhag to have two separate knives. However, even on that, the Taz says that if I want to go take the knife and stick it into the ground, the fleshing knife, and even not stick it in the ground. Let's say I take a fleshing knife and I clean it off properly, clean it nicely, and then I want to then go use that with bread. There is no minhag to have separate knives if I'm going to use it for bread. The Shach argues there's a minhag even on that. The minhag is to have two separate knives. Okay. Now there's a couple of other things over here. There's one thing. Let's see if he talks about it. The Bani Shulchan brings it. Let's see. Brings down that we have now minhag to use separate kalim for everything. There's a massive discussion in the Achronim if today, I think the Darkei Tshuva brings down that today we do not have this problem. We cleaning a knife with a sponge and with soap today is much stronger than their methods back then, and therefore we do not have a concern that the knives have shuman karish on them, and therefore it could very well be that that is cleaning it in the way we clean our knives today in the sink is considered ni'itza. That's the Darkei Tshuva brings that down. I don't see that here, but I saw that in the Darkei Tshuva. Now there's another thing that's brought down in the Poskim. Pri Megadim brings this down that we have a minhag to do hagala. That if you have a fleshing vessel, we do not allow you to go do hagala to use that vessel as a milchig vessel. or the opposite. And the reason is because we're worried that if you do this, you only keep one vessel, and you'll use it through constantly doing avil, and one time you'll forget. So that's a concern. And this, there's the Marsham says that if you did it, we don't forbid the food. And it's debatable about whether or not we allow you to use the vessel if you did it anyways. It's debatable in the Achronim. It also brings down that if you did not use the vessel for 12 months, that's no problem to change it from fleshig to milchigs, because we're soymech at the Chacham Tzvi that says that after 12 months, taste is totally gone. Another thing that the Pri Megadim brings down in Archaim is that even though we have this minhag not to change vessels from milchigs to fleshig, vice versa, but if you take the vessel and you make it treif, then could be some hold it's okay. The Pri Megadim brings that down. Some want to argue against that. The Ba'al Shulchan certainly doesn't understand that. And so l'chayra, those are the general halachas. Let's again just take a look at the tshuva here. Yeah. Okay.